Today's episode of Transform Your Workplace is brought to you by Xenium HR. Starting in July, Xenium's annual What People Want from Work survey is now open. Links in the show notes. This is an employee engagement survey. It's free to participate, and you get a free report in the end where we ask many questions about what people want from you as an employer and what you could do better at as an employer, and we'll analyze all those results and give them back to you so you can take action and transform your workplace. Sign up through August 16th, and we'd love to have you participate. All right, today's episode features a returning guest, James Ferguson. James is the Director of Culture for the Wurzak Hotel Group, and he came on the show to discuss a lot of cultural changes that they made and some improvements from an employer branding perspective, internal communications, recognition, and we talked at length about some recognition programs both he has done inside of his hotel group, and then I share some of the things that Xenium's doing as well that's been really successful. So you're going to get a lot of really good insights about what makes a really good employee experience and culture from this episode. Enjoy the conversation with James Ferguson. Here it is. James, it's a pleasure to have you back on Transform Your Workplace. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited to be back. It's been about, a year and a half now? A lot has changed since we last talked.
Yeah, about a year and a half. We talked about your book, and big things have changed for you. So why don't you give me a little bit more insight as to how your role has changed and just what you're up to?
Well, before I do that, I have to congratulate you because I think you recently just got promoted as well. So let's give it up for you. Good job.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Insert confetti.
Yeah, we'll like dub that in somehow.
But yeah, feel very fortunate to be in a similar boat. Last time we talked, I was the general manager of a hotel called Element in Valley Forge, or it's King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. But since then, I've been promoted to a position as the director of culture for Wurzak Hotel Group. Same company, but in a more zoomed out capacity where I really support and focus on the culture of the entire organization. So we have 10 hotels, one aiming to be open in June, so that'll make 11. And yeah, it's just been such a rewarding process because this role didn't exist prior with the company. There's just been a lot of opportunity to get my hands dirty and my fingerprints kind of on everything and learn through the process, which has been great.
So much I want to unpack with that. So they didn't have that role before. Is this a new carved out role?
It is. Our team, we were at a position at the time that I kind of brought this up. I brought up my hope for the future as far as my career standpoint. And obviously that didn't exist at the time. But, there was a shift there where there was some transition. And I said, honestly, this is the best time. I know it doesn't feel like it, but this is honestly the best time to make this pivot, to make this change and make this decision to bring me on in this capacity and allow me to do this full time and focus on it to improve the whole company. And, I feel very fortunate. Honestly, I don't have the typical HR background. I've been a leader in ops for many years and, they took a risk on me and I feel very fortunate to be proving them right ever since.
What's interesting about that, I actually love the fact that you don't have an HR background in some ways because you don't have like preconceived notions about how things operate. You're maybe not as policy driven. You can hire people for that. You probably got people for the policy side. But if you care about people and the experience inside the walls of your organization, that's really all that matters. And then you can dictate the strategy. So I love that the fact that you probably painted a vision for where your career wanted to go, and even offer some suggestions for why you were the right person for that role. And then look at you now, you're in this role that now gets to pave the way for employee experience.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Honestly, I feel like I got to pinch myself every once in a while because again, they did take a risk on me. It wasn't a position before. And, I just feel very fortunate to be in this role. It's honestly a dream job for me.
In this role, since you are taking a higher level approach, like a bigger global look, 32,000 foot view, whatever you want to say, you're probably working on different things and you probably recognize some areas that you wanted to approach or maybe problems you wanted to solve first. What were some of those things you identified to work on?
Well, I think from the lack of experience in the industry, I had a lot of guidance from our VP of People. Her name is Dr. Kelly McKino, and she has really helped support through the strategy and support of vision.
Hmm.
Some of the things that we kind of started with was trying to tell our story. And before you kind of tell your story externally, you got to tell it internally.
Yeah.
So your team knows who you are, why you exist, why what they do matters, and how their day to day impacts that and drives that forward. So, the way that we kind of kicked it off was we focused on orientation, because through orientation, you can create context, connection, and culture. And then that education enables action. So that is where we put our energy up front. And that honestly had a direct impact on our turnover numbers very early in the game when we rolled that out. And again, it just helped our team feel unified in a way that they just hadn't before.
Right.
And that was really the foundation to everything that we did after that, for sure.
You were telling me, I can't remember if we were recording or not. I think it was it was offline, but you've got 10 hotels as part of the group. So you're taking a pretty high level look at the employee experience, the culture across the organization. You're probably trying to create some cohesiveness, right? Like
Absolutely.
You get the parent company who kind of oversees all these hotels, and you probably want a similar experience across all these hotels. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? Because each of our hotels has a different flag under Marriott and Hilton. So, they have their own brands, their own procedures, their own policies, and then we're basically trying to create that same standardization, that same almost rebranding of our company, and helping it be employee focused and driven, and helping our team understand that what they do truly drives everything we do forward. And we've been very fortunate to have a lot of flexibility, a lot of trust in our team, which I know, I listen to your show often. In HR, that is not necessarily the case, very often. Sometimes you have to come and be an advocate, but you get shut down time and time again. And, I think for a company, Wurzak Hotel Group, who didn't have this same structure a year and a half ago and was willing to take this step forward and has been so open and willing to listen and take advice and allow us the autonomy to do the things that we have in a very short period of time. I think it just says a lot about the company, the direction we're going in. Again, we're in a trajectory where we're going to be growing even more very soon. And so, we started with orientation, and then we started to look at, okay, now that we've done that, how do we start to improve engagement and recognition and reward and things like that? So we started to roll out other programs that supported that same vision while making sure that our mission and our pillars were the focal point of everything we did.
Mm-hmm. The growth is fun, right? Like it's better than the opposite
Absolutely.
side of like having to lay off people. And it's fun because you get to work on the strategy sides. Like, how do we make things better? How do we onboard people effectively while like getting them up to speed on what our norms are, what our culture's like immediately? Like, you love that work, don't you?
Oh, I love every minute of it.
That's great. Like, what's your favorite part of the culture side?
I think honestly, it's just the process. Like, I think, and we'll get more and more depth in this, but there's no finish line, right? So you have to kind of just fall in love with the process of improvement. And those improvements happen every day. They're small increments. And sometimes it's hard to really zoom out and see the compound effect. But that's what I've learned to fall in love with, because if you do that, everything else will actualize over time. If you try to focus on an end result, or you're never going to get there and feel satisfied. And you don't want to, hold on to your happiness for that moment. You want to enjoy the process. And so every aspect, from not knowing what I'm doing to learning through it, to implementation, to seeing the impact on our team members firsthand, and then watching the data reflected as well. It's just a very rewarding process when you see it from that lens. And, I encourage the listeners to shift their perspective to enjoy that process, because it's so important.
I love what you're saying. It reminds me of like the role I take inside my organization, which I'm in marketing, and everything I try to do is like to create value for people. And I feel like those things, like you do all the right things and you try things, maybe they don't work out so well, and you pivot a little bit, but you do the right things and you figure out what works. You add value to people's life, and you have some sort of mission or centered focus. The results will come. And so like I think about you and people like you who oversee culture. And if you always care about the people and you put them first and try to create a great experience, and you tinker, you try new things, maybe it didn't work, try some more things, and just always improve and build upon that, things will turn out. I truly believe that. Do you believe that?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And to your point, I often say, especially even through orientation, which really sets us up for success from the first day forward. You know, I say on our mission statement slide, that's the most important slide that we go through, because if we do that every single day, everything we hope to accomplish individually, as a department, as a hotel, and as a company will become a direct result. And so, you know, everything that we've done, you know, we developed this program, or I would say not developed, but improved it, a culture champion that we do every quarter. We really made sure that it was driven by our mission, that the stories that they shared is for the nominees was driven by our mission, and the story, you know, exemplified that. But like something like that, that's driven by that, and then is peer to peer, which allows their voice to be heard and them celebrating the people that they work hard next to. I mean, it starts to change the culture. And even as an example, we just celebrate our Q1 luncheons. You know, for us, we had, you know, stewards who work in the kitchen win. We had night auditors who are people that work overnight at our front desk, recognized by their peers. And I think that's what's also so rewarding to watch, is that people that normally aren't seen are being seen, and they're being seen by their peers and celebrated for it. And that's just really awesome to watch.
That's huge. You talk about how orientation onboarding is pretty important. I'm a sucker for memes and GIFs on the internet. And I think it was yesterday, I saw this, I think it was an HR based channel or something, but it was like beaten down, dirty road, and then inter organization 90-day onboarding was like a nice, beautiful paved road with beautiful striped lines. And then after 90 days was another beaten path and road, just proving the point that like most organizations have a really good onboarding experience for 30 to 90 days and then see ya. And it's like a crappy experience after that. How do you make sure that onboarding never stops, orientation never stops, that they from day one, they have a good experience, know what they're getting into, and that experience lasts throughout the life cycle of an employee?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we've taken a lot of time to kind of strategically look at that and see what's going to be the most impactful. There's a lot of things that we do. I think the last time that we spoke, I highlighted this, and now we do it very consistently across our hotels, which is Culture Committee. That is a monthly gathering to ensure voices are heard, but more importantly, that actions are taken because our team members' voices are heard. And something that actually stemmed from that thing that is, you know, every month was a recognition program. So we have a HR manager at our home too that brought up an idea for an on-the-spot recognition program. And so when that came about, we started to kind of discuss it with other culture committees across the hotels and began to see that it would be something that would possibly impact the entire organization, not just her hotel. So from there, we began to plan it out and prepare for it, and, you know, went through the steps. We had, you know, involvement from everyone from her to the GMs to our VPs and our president to support in building this thing out. You know, long story short, it went from something 6 months ago as an idea to an action that's a full-on program that we rolled out in February this year called the Wurzak WOW program. And it simply is a recognition program where our team members are instantly acknowledged for living out our brand pillars. They get given a card, circle the pillar, high-five them, and then they go drop the bucks in the box. And from there, every week, we celebrate a winner of the week for that.
Yeah.
So from that, you're creating consistency right there, because every day someone's getting recognized, and every week someone's winning. And so when you talk about those brand pillars and that mission and that orientation in the first week or even in the first 30 days, we're living that out every week thereafter. And then you have this culture committee every month, and then you have the culture champion quarterly luncheons. And so you're just constantly building off this belief and this understanding that what you do matters, that we appreciate you for it, and then let's go be better together.
I'm laughing because we have the exact same recognition program, like a WOW. We call it a WOW card. Did you steal it from me, or did I steal it from you? I have no idea, but like, we've been doing this.
No, honestly, it was Catherine's idea. I can't even take it. To be completely honest, and I've shared this on other podcasts, when she first brought it to me, I said I didn't like it. And the reason was because when you develop programs like this, if you don't do it right, it can break down trust. It can create favoritism.
Yep.
You know, a lot of times with point systems and stuff like that, people just give points to who they like or who they see the most.
Yeah.
And so my fear was like, oh no, let's think this through, because it could do the exact opposite. And that's why we kind of got more people involved to make sure we did it the right way.
Yeah, I agree. We implemented a program pre-pandemic. Same example you're giving is like, we call it a WOW card. I actually designed a physical card that we printed out, and it would have all the core values that we agreed upon, that we developed as a culture committee. And so you could basically like recognize somebody, and it usually falls into one of those categories, like whatever core values, you check that off. And then you physically give it to somebody, or I think we gave it to our culture committee, and then they would present it every once in a while. And then pandemic happened, and like, well, we got to digitize this somehow.
Right.
And I built a workflow around it where it's like a link to Typeform or something. It's basically a survey where they would fill it out, select the thing, and then I built a workflow where it would email the manager, the person being nominated, and the nominator. And so everybody sees it instantly. And then we would then share it like at an all team meeting on a monthly basis. So it's just that constant reinforcement of the core value, and the fact that it's like so easy to nominate somebody, it makes it frictionless. So there's no excuses to recognize people. That's the biggest barrier. That's what you're describing is why you probably didn't like it. You're like, this is complicated. It's not going to work, but you figured out a way to do it. And I bet you it's a game changer, isn't it?
Oh, it's an absolute game changer. And I am so happy that I was wrong. I think I'm not supposed to have all the ideas. And I think when you do start to involve everybody in your organization at every level, you begin to hear and see ideas that you just wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And yeah, honestly, we just did our luncheons, as I just mentioned. And in that, we took a moment where at each hotel, we said, anybody that's received a WOW card over the last 90 days, please stand up. And in that moment, like the entire room stood up.
Wow. Oh, I love that.
At all of our hotels. And so it was such an impactful moment where you're like, wow, look at what this program is doing. I don't need to say anything about it. You guys are showing me how it's impacting us. And then, of course, we would then lead into recognizing those that have won over the first few weeks of it. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're just, again, scratching the surface. Our turnover numbers are definitely down since the rollout, but we won't really see the impact of this until probably Q2. But it's just really exciting to have a program like that impacts people every day, because it's very rare to do that, and also it's rare to do that successfully and have your team be bought into the process. And we've been very fortunate to get the team very engaged with it.
Do you offer incentives with the WOW cards? So like let's say, as Brandon receiving, like I say, I've got 5 WOW cards or something, can I turn them in for something? Like that's what we do internally. We felt like there needed to be also an incentive piece for achieving the WOW cards other than just the recognition itself. But I'm curious what you do.
So right now we only, so every week we give out a gift card, $25 gift card for the winner of the week. But the actual card for us, as we looked at the program and rolled it out, was really, and you said this a minute ago, like it's about building the habit, right? And there's a lot of leaders that love their desk and want to stay in their office. And the only way their team is going to be excited about coming to work every day and understand the value they bring is if they get out of their office, engage with them, and celebrate them for it. So that was kind of the process and thought as we went through it, is making sure that our leaders get activated and our team members. But I think like any good program, you analyze the data, you talk to your team, and you grow. I mean, we've definitely thrown around that maybe similar to a point system that they can accumulate and then, get prizes of larger options for sure down the road. So you never know.
Yeah, and that's what we've done. I'll just share it with you live, and maybe people listening could get value from it too. But
yeah,
we allow people to trade in up to, I think, 5 WOW cards per quarter, and 5 WOW cards would get you a $100 Amazon card. It would get you 3 bottles of wine or half a day of PTO. I think those are the top 3 things that people tend to trade things in for. But we do limit it because like you don't want people willy-nilly like just recognizing people that we want it to be meaningful, right? So we do limit the incentive piece, but it's the recognition. You can't beat it, man. It's like people love to hear their name privately, publicly, and just seeing it in a card format or digital, however you do it. It's super meaningful. It connects people to the organization.
For sure. And then we have a tracking system. So for me, in my role, I have this shared Google Doc that everybody puts in who won it, the department, what pillar was recognized, and then the story or the example as to why they were celebrated. So we can then use that information to celebrate those stories on social, internally through our newsletter, or wherever it makes sense, whether it's at Huddle each morning. So yeah, there's just so much good that comes out of it that is, beyond just that moment of recognition that we can continue to celebrate long term. So
you'd emailed me some data points, and one caught my eye. You said that your Glassdoor rating was a 2.5 and it went to a 4.7. That's a huge jump. What's up with that?
So it was actually at a 2.2.
2.2.
It was at a 2.2. Now, look, I want to make sure that I preface this. I think, without someone in this role, in this perspective prior, there was nobody telling our story or celebrating our story internally or externally. So we got what we got, right? And so, again, what we've been able to do is, with our brand pillars, so those kind of actualized, I would say maybe 8 months ago. And we did kind of a 3-step process to that where we created awareness, we had education, and then activation. Awareness, we created these brand pillar posters that we put in the break room. So we wanted people to understand what those were so that when we took the next step, they already had that base level foundation. Then we started to do huddle exercises where we went through like a 10-minute segment at our daily stand-ups and we reviewed how what we do every day, whether it's checking somebody in or the TVs go down or whatever it may be, laundry, someone calls out, like whatever the scenario is, how that can pertain to the pillar and how we can live it out every day. And then from there, and that was over a series of time, and then from there, the activation came in, which is this on-the-spot recognition program, Wurzak Wow. So we went from creating that awareness, creating education, understanding, and then activating our leaders and our team members to live it out every day. And that process is what has led to that growth, truly. I think obviously some of these culture champion, culture committee, orientation all has pieces in it. But I think that 3-step process is what really led to that growth. In the Philly region, which is where I spend most of my time, which is where I'm out of, yes, we were at a 4.7. I think overall 4.2. But yeah, I mean, it's insane, honestly. But I think it's those data points, those moments where you're like, okay, what I'm doing is making an impact. It really is scaling across the company, and people are willing and able to share that experience now in a way that they didn't either feel comfortable or confident in doing. And now they do. And that obviously means a lot.
I think one of the biggest challenges for leaders is, especially in your case where you have like 10, 11 different locations, is keeping a pulse on what people want from their employer.
Yeah.
And I mean, like in terms of compensation, benefits, I mean, truly the experience they have on the job, the resources or tools they need to do their job effectively. Like you got to keep a pulse on all of that. How are you going about that? Are you like surveying your people quarterly, monthly, annually? Like, what are you doing?
So, since my role started, we definitely still use culture committees as a platform for that data collection for sure. We're getting to the phase where we're starting to roll out like new hire and exit surveys and things like that. From an engagement survey standpoint, I think that's the next step. That's been the interesting thing for me, going from a GM who, like, if I had a problem, I solved it right then, to this where you have to like do it in a process. Like,
yeah,
you cannot do it all at once. It's not possible. And so there's been a lot of patience through the process. But yeah, we're definitely working towards getting that and being able to scale that information and collect it and have a dashboard and look at all that stuff and then make those decisions. But at the same time, that platform of Culture Committee has allowed those voices to be heard and to better understand what their needs are and make adjustments, whether it's the tools they need to do their job well or the experiences they want to feel more like they belong. All of it is kind of coming from different directions, but it's my job to kind of keep a very close eye on what those things are and make sure we're doing something about it for sure.
The culture committee that you're talking about, is it people at contributor level, like across the hotels, or is it corporate, or like how is that structured?
So it is our line level team members at our hotels and kind of supervisors. Definitely some leadership in there on occasion just to either set the tone or keep the dialogue going. But it's really ultimately about keeping those voices heard. And of course, when you're part of that culture committee, you become an advocate. And so you're out there, all in the field and asking your team members, whether it's in laundry, at the front desk, in the kitchen, like, hey, I'm going to culture committee tomorrow. Like, what are the things that you need? What are you hearing from your colleagues? Like, how can I be a voice for you? And then go do something about it. And I think that's so important to provide that voice to those team members. And now that we've been doing that consistently across the board for over a year and a half now, we've started to gain that trust, that understanding that those things are happening, and more people are starting to join those culture committees to make sure they have that kind of impact.
Do you have like roles and responsibilities on that committee, or is it pretty loose with just being an extension of leadership and the employees and like kind of bridging those two groups? How's it structured?
Yeah, it's definitely a structure. I would say it's not like a safety committee where you have your chair and your, all these different things. Like, it's not like that. Yeah. We don't have that. But I would say, there's a template that they fill out. who is there, where do we do it? There's definitely 5 topics that they focus on, and then there's a series of questions that kind of re-energize the conversation if those aren't really driving home. Everything from recognition and reward to development to tools and training. It's really focused on a certain aspect of the business and their, experience. And that allows us to really understand where the needs are. And every hotel is different, right? Some needs
Yeah.
more than others in certain areas, and they wind up sharing that information with me, so then we can take a look at a larger scale and then help us make decisions at a larger scale, which again is how that Wurzak Wow program started in the first place, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm. I think you were talking earlier about crafting like I don't know if you call it like the brand story or like your mission story or culture story, something like that. How are you reinforcing that story so it is consistent across all those hotels and the people?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a lot of the things that I talked about today. I think, one of the big things that we focused on is our mantra, which is "We are Wurzak," and how all of us every single day impact who we are becoming, right? And that we're becoming, there's no end to that, right? We're becoming someone better every single day. And, one of the things that I started to do very early in my time in this role, I'm a big sports guy. And for those that are listening that are as well, I know you are, a lot of sports teams, whether it's collegiately or professionally, they have a hand symbol that unifies that group. Miami has the U, Gators have the chomp. Different teams have different hand symbols. And so what I decided to do was create one for us that would allow us to be unified, geographically dispersed, and help our team know that they have a hand in what we do. And so the W, you see it all over LinkedIn.
That's awesome.
That's where it came from. Is like, I want everybody to do something that means something to us. And when you see it, you know what it means and you feel part of something. And when our teams do that and they see it in the newsletter, they see it on social, we come together and do videos or whatever it is, they understand what it means and it truly drives our culture forward. And that mantra, "We are Wurzak," kind of just emphasizes that. And that's something that we share first day forward in orientation. And then everywhere thereafter from a branding standpoint, it's on every poster for our luncheons, for an update, for whatever it is. It's in our handbook, like everything, our website. So that process of building that out and having that branding be consistent has been another rewarding process for me because I'm doing a lot more marketing than I think I imagined coming into this. I thought I'd be throwing confetti every day.
Yep. Dude, I'm telling you, like, it is marketing.
Absolutely. But I truly have fallen in love with that process. And, I feel very fortunate to have been through that process to learn through it. Because again, it's not something I did as a GM. I did it in my own capacity, I guess, utilizing Canva or whatever else. But now I'm like doing it at a larger scale and thinking, how's this going to impact every team member we have instead of the, 25 that are within my building. So yeah, it's been great.
Well, keep up the good work. I mean, I'm sure I'll check in with you in another year on the podcast and maybe you like some sort of huge transformations happened since then and teach me a few things, teach our listeners a few things. So anything you want to say, like in just parting before like maybe we left off on something that is really important? I don't know if you have anything else you want to share.
I mean, I always love to end anything I do with a quote that's my favorite quote. And it's this: "What you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say." And I used to use this as a GM, and I would say, "Don't tell me, show me. Don't tell me you want a promotion. Don't tell me you're going to improve your attendance. Show me." And the same thing is for your listeners today. Don't tell me you want to improve your culture. Show me.
That's well said. My guest today has been James Ferguson. James, pleasure to have you back on. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.